Hey everyone, my name is Penny Zanker, and it's time to reset. This podcast goes beyond just navigating change. It's about new ways of thinking about how you can approach challenges, how you can shift your mindset when needed, create some space and grace for yourself so that you can rethink, recharge, and reprioritize when and where needed. Are you ready to unlock your full potential? Thank you for hitting play and sharing this next episode with me. It's time to reset. Hello and welcome to Take Back Time. My name is Penny Zanker and I'm your host. And we're always looking for different angles and views and ways for you to work smarter, for you to, if you're an entrepreneur, for you to grow your business, to increase your positioning in the marketplace. If you're an executive, how do you build your decision-making, thought leadership? Taking back your time is about working smarter and not harder. So today I'm excited to talk to Jeremy Slate, and we're going to talk about fueling your podcast on YouTube and the strategies that you can use. And I think we'll also, for those of you who are executives and listening, we'll be talking about how you too can use YouTube and these tools to expand your thought leadership and even engagement within your organization. So let me tell you a little bit about Jeremy before I bring him on here. He is the host of Create Your Own Life podcast, which studies the high performers of the world. He studied literature at Oxford University, as well as holding a master's in early Roman Empire propaganda. That's interesting. From Seton Hall University. And his podcast was named the #1 podcast to listen to by Inc. magazine, as well as top 40 under 40 by Podcast Magazine. Wow. So this guy knows what he's talking about. And here he is. Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Hey, Penny. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. From time to time, I might have to mute and clear my throat as I ate some kind of almond that's stuck in my throat here.
No worries. I understand. Every time I try to schedule something after lunch, I have a lot of hot sauce usually with my meals, and my nasal cavities are all open. So I get it.
And you're all sweaty and you're
yeah, exactly. But I love hot sauce. Don't take it away from me.
All right. Well, let's just start there, because it's a random thought, right? Isn't it crazy how we are attracted, it's painful, right? But
right.
Somehow we love it, right?
Yeah.
Hot sauce, or what are some other examples of things that we that we torture ourselves with, but we love it?
So I'm a big gym rat, so I beat the heck out of my body, but I love it. I enjoy it. It's competitive for me. It's fun for me.
Right.
But
push ourselves, right?
Some days I don't feel great the next day. Maybe my legs hurt or something like that, but I love it.
I like to do that too, right? And then you think, I'm going to walk into this class and it's going to be difficult, but you're still there and you're still doing it. So I find that very interesting. And that's where coming back to the hot sauce, that's where some of the spice of life is, right?
Exactly.
So random thoughts that aren't related to what we're talking about, but human life.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, you've got a high ranking podcast. So that's fantastic. By the way, I need to be on your podcast too, but we'll talk about that later. So for people who are listening, for people who have a podcast and don't have a podcast, what are some of the things that make a podcast great? These high performers that you're talking about? Because I would imagine, just so that you can come back to this question too,
Sure.
that there are things that make a podcast great that can be filtered into everything that we do. So
if you're looking from just a production perspective, something that sounds good and the video is good enough, it doesn't have to be crazy good. But I think that's really important. But if you're looking at content wise, it makes a really good podcast. If it's an interview show, being a great interviewer actually matters. I think it's really important because it creates a good flow for the conversation. It makes you feel like the conversation's under control. And I think that's really important. So for me, I've always looked at people that I think are good interviewers, and I tried to see what do they do well? Larry King, Oprah, people that have done a lot of interviews. And I try to see what verbiage do they use? How do they handle other people? I think it's really important to understand that. Also, as a guest, I think one of the most important things, and this is kind of me wearing my host hat saying this, is people that aren't ambiguous, if that makes sense. If you're going to discuss a topic, really discuss the topic. But I feel if a guest is kind of beaten around the bush and you don't really get into the kind of the meat and potatoes of things, it can make it difficult. So I think that's important. And then also understanding, from a host perspective, maybe this person does a lot of media. What's something they haven't talked about or a way they haven't talked about it? So I think those are, to me, a few things that make a really great conversation.
Yeah, I totally agree. I want to come back to, you said when a guest is vague. So I'm known to say, well, can you explain that? Can you give an example? Or so I think it comes back to what you were saying about the host and how the host can make a great show, because you can take mediocre guests and make them a great guest because of the way that you ask the questions and how deep you go is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. And sometimes asking a question multiple times, because you'll ask somebody the question and they'll answer a question you didn't answer, or they'll go in a different direction. So you have to be okay with asking it again or asking it a different way, or, hey, let me reiterate that or something like that. So you're totally right. I think that's really, really important. Also, as well, just from a guest perspective, I think sometimes people try to send people to other places, like, oh, check out my YouTube channel or on this page of my book, whatever it might be. You have to understand that when people are coming to a podcast, they're coming for information. So make sure they get that. There'll be time to talk about those other things, but I do think that sometimes people can come to it with a me first perspective. So you kind of have to have those couple things in place.
Yeah, I love that. Coming back to what you said about the interviewer, and the reason I keep coming back to that a little bit, is because I think there are so many parallels with what you just said to leadership. And I want to make that clear because some people on here don't have a podcast and maybe they're not thinking about being a guest on a podcast. So I want them to see how this is applicable in their life anyway, because what you said was the verbiage that people use, right? That matters in our lives and building relationships. So do you have anything that you'd like to add to that? You said verbiage, you said how they handle people, the kind of questions that they ask. Is there anything, if putting that lens on, about leadership that you might add to that and that parallels?
Well, I think leadership is also a big part of it is courage, right? I think often even the simplicity of asking a question multiple times, sometimes people don't have the courage to do that because it might get a little uncomfortable. Maybe someone doesn't want to answer that question, right? So you have to be able to kind of handle that situation. So I think to me, courage is one of the number one things, even to being a great interview. Maybe going to a place somebody doesn't want to go, or handling a topic they don't want to handle, or maybe talking about a delicate subject. So I think you have to have courage, and that kind of underbeds everything you're going to do.
Absolutely. I love that. So we were talking about your podcast and some of the things that you've seen. You talked about good guests, good hosts. What about because we're going to segue into how to use this and leverage it on YouTube. Is there anything else that you think is really important to talk about in terms of the content? Because I think people are there for the content. What keeps people is, like you said, it's the style and the interviewer, but also that they're walking away with something that's valuable to their life. So is there anything else that you would really highlight as it comes down to the content and how to best frame it for people?
Well, I think even, Penny, it's just a simple thing, but I think it has to be entertaining, right? And I think that's a really, really important part of it as well. People want to be educated, they want to learn, but they also want to be a little bit entertained. So I think when you're looking at that, it's also figuring out how do you bring your audience into the conversation and make them feel like a part of it, make it a great engaging thing. So people want to be taught, they want to learn, but they want to be entertained. And I think you have to remember that too.
Okay, Jeremy, then you need to tell us a joke because we need to be entertained about right now on the spot.
On the spot. Okay.
Or an interesting story of someone that you interviewed. How about that? We can take you off the hook. You don't
my 6-year-old was 1 year old at this point, and we had just gotten over potty training. And I was on a Zoom call, and my wife was at her mom's that day. So I was watching the kid, and she runs into the Zoom call and goes, "Dad, I just pooped and you have to wipe my butt." That was one of the single most embarrassing experiences on a podcast, but it was kind of funny.
Nice. That is funny. Well, I'm sure that was very entertaining for people.
Yeah, it added a little bit to it.
That opens up another question for me, because this is also everybody's on Zoom, right? Let's say it's not a podcast. Let's say it's a meeting, right? The same kind of thing happens. How do you help people to realize that, and it seems today it's more than ever, that it's just part of life? We get embarrassed about something like that, but at the end of the day, do you think anybody's angry with you or thinks that you did a lesser quality or whatever? We're compassionate, I believe, right? So help people to deal with when stuff happens.
I think the interesting part about it is we don't realize the effect we create as a person. So I think a lot of times how we handle it is often how other people respond to it, right? So if we respond to it where we're stressed and we're kind of oh my gosh, this thing just happened, I'm so sorry, everybody. You're like, oh man, my kid's funny, isn't she? Like kind of like, I think making it's life, right? Like, don't be embarrassed. Don't make it feel weird for other people. It's life. And it's at the same time, like, it's cool that a dad's involved in a kid's life and things like that. So I think it's just kind of like people will respond very often based on how you respond. So I think your response is really important.
I love that. I'm glad you repeated that because I think it's worth repeating.
Yeah.
And I think that is true in every area of our life. So we're not just, you're bringing us life bombs as well as podcast bombs, right?
What's the energy you bring, right? Like if you bring that you're afraid or you're embarrassed or whatever it might be, like other people might feel like they have to feel that way, right? So if you kind of make it feel like, hey, we're all cool here, everybody's good, often you'll find other people will handle it the same way.
No doubt. There's no doubt that energy is contagious, right? Okay, so before we move on to looking at the YouTube side of things and how we can expand our podcast, it brings me also to an interesting, like, did you ever, like, what's the most interesting podcast that you had? Like a story that somebody brought up or they taught you something you weren't expected? Like maybe you can share something like that with us.
So I'm a huge Yankees fan. And I think though he wasn't like the most famous Yankees player, when he was still playing, my favorite player was Nick Swisher, right fielder for the Yankees when he played. And he's got a really cool story about really great baseball player in high school. And a lot of times good baseball players are drafted right out of high school, right? You're going to play in the minors. And he registers for the draft and there wasn't a single team interested in him. And his dad was a former pro ball player, Steve Swisher. So it was kind of like really embarrassing. Like my dad was a first round pick and nobody's interested in me, whatever it might be. So then he tries out for a bunch of different schools, ends up walking on at Ohio State University, earns himself a scholarship. And by the time he graduates, he's also a first round pick, but he had to figure out how to earn it. And I think to me, it's really cool because I think when you look at people that you admire or they feel unreachable, you have to realize they're people too, right? And I think there's so many learning events from that.
And you don't realize what somebody went through to get where they are. So there's so many things there, right? Within that little story that are super impactful. And maybe that's a good segue. You said he had to figure out how to earn it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same with podcasting.
It is
you got to figure out how to earn it. And part of that is also how to market it, how to be found, right? Because you can talk to no one and it can be a really great podcast, but nobody's listening. So let's segue into that. How do we get found as a podcast? And apparently you've got some amazing strategies around YouTube that I would love to hear about.
So there's like, number one, like I've had an audio podcast forever, right? Like we're closing on 10 years in this. And when I first started, there were 240,000 podcasts out there. There's like somewhere around 3 or 3.5 million now. Like it kind of depends on whose numbers you believe. But it's a lot harder to get found in audio, especially because a lot of these apps don't have algorithms. So it's very hard to get discovered as a new audio podcast. So when you look at something like YouTube, YouTube is the number 2 search engine in the world after another Google property, and that's Google itself. So you're opening yourself up to a whole bunch of search traffic. And search traffic's one thing, but you also need to know like what gets looked for on these platforms. So there's how you get found, but there's also you have to look good enough so that when people find you, they stick around to watch it. And I think people get really stressed out about like what type of camera do I need or what type of studio setup do I need? Your video needs to look just good enough so that you look somewhat professional. You don't need to go crazy. Most people that know how to light zoom, you're in great shape. Audio quality is actually really important because you don't want it to sound like nails on a chalkboard. You want it to be like people can actually listen to it. And that doesn't mean you need to have a very professional setup, but you need to look good and sound good enough. And I think that's important. And there's some great tools out there if you're having trouble with that. Sound especially, if you record sound files that don't sound great. Adobe has a tool called Auto Enhance, and you can actually take a file that sounds like it wasn't recorded on a mic, and it'll make it sound very close to being recorded on a mic. It's a very, very useful software. So Adobe Enhance if you're having trouble with that, because audio is one of the number one things. But when you're looking at getting found on YouTube, you also have to know, like, what are the kind of rules to the game? And there's 3 things that matter the most in getting a video found on YouTube. The first is the title, the second is the description, and the third one is the tags. The title is the number one thing that matters. That's what you're titling an episode. And there's a few different tools out there that you're going to want to use that you can actually score titles to know that they're better. One is called vidIQ. Really great tool. It's a little bit on the pricier side, but it's a great tool. Another one called Taja.ai. So it's TAJA.ai. And this will actually write titles, descriptions, and tags for you. So it basically like really helps you like put those things together. Now, when you're looking at a video, there's three major statistics that matter, right? There's impressions. So those are people that actually see your video in a search feed. Click-through rate, or CTR, those are people that see it in the search and then they actually click on it. And then there's average view duration, or AVD. So that's the amount of time people are watching your video. If your average view duration is good, and if your impressions are good, but let's say your click-through rate is terrible, well, the simplicity of that is you need to change your thumbnail, right? So when you're looking, impressions usually come from a really good title, meaning people see you in search or see more of you because you wrote a good title. If you're seeing that you're getting high impressions, you're getting people watching your video, but your view numbers aren't where they should be, you're going to look at what's called your click-through rate, or your CTR. If your click-through rate is below like 3, obviously you want to be around 6 to 10 would be great. But if you're below 3, you really want to consider making a better thumbnail. Now, there's a lot of great tools out there that can help you make a thumbnail. The new Canva is amazing, Penny. It's like, I've been a Photoshop user for years, but I know a lot of people aren't crazy technical. The new Canva is incredible because a lot of the AI tools cut the learning curve like you wouldn't believe. So you can make different options of thumbnails and just kind of see what works. They have some really good templates too.
I love Canva. So when you say new Canva, I haven't really used all the AI features in there, but I've been using Canva
they're amazing.
for years. So that's good. I'll have to go and play around with that. But Canva,
like, there's ones where like they've always kind of had the silhouette feature where you can cut out somebody's background. It's gotten really good now, but they have one called Magic Eraser where you can actually erase somebody from the image, and it's great. They have some AI tools where you can type in something to put into the photo and it'll bring it into the photo, as long as it's not like a real person, right? Like, you can't say like, oh, put the president in my photo. They're not going to do that. It has to be things that are kind of just like very generalized things, like a man with a beard or something like that. But the AI tools are incredible.
I have used the erase features and all of that, and it's amazing. So actually what I do sometimes is I have to do it in Canva and bring it into Photoshop, because PowerPoint, because PowerPoint doesn't have a good background thing if you want to do something there. So,
well, and the upscaling feature is really good too, because when you're looking at an image for a thumbnail, like the quality of a photo for a thumbnail is like is so important, like of a human being. And we found kind of the optimum number of people to have on there is 2. You have more than 2 people on a thumbnail, you're not going to do as well. Sometimes you could do well with just one person on there, but usually 2 people is a number you don't want to go more than. But the upscaling, upscaling means like taking the image quality and taking it from grainy to really good quality. That really matters for what's going to pop when somebody's searching.
Let me ask you a question. So I used to post, and I don't do enough on YouTube. There's so much potential there, and I know it. And thank you. You're kicking me in the butt right now, and
glad to help.
I'm going to need to do that. I used to post each individual video, and then the YouTube podcast came around, and they'll take the RSS feed and they'll pull it into YouTube. Like, is there any benefit so that people who are using YouTube, should they be doing it twice and using it through? Because I think that only brings in audio and doesn't bring in the video.
Unless I know there's like Spotify for podcasts. If you host with them, you can host video podcasts there, which you would be able to pull a video podcast into the RSS feed. So it depends on if your podcast host actually hosts video. Very few of them do. I think Libsyn has the ability. I just don't know like what the pricing tier or whatever it is that it looks like. But it has to be a video podcast to pull it in. Now, I've seen a lot of shows, like the James Altucher show is one that I'm thinking off top hand. And what James actually does is he has the audio feed that gets pulled in is one part of it, but then he also takes the full video and does a video for it. Because the thing you want to consider is, what do people come to YouTube for? Well, they come to YouTube to see a video. So audio might be great, and you might have some people that want to listen to it, but most people are coming there to actually see a video. So you want to consider what their experience is.
Awesome. So a lot of great things. We're coming to the end of our time. What's the one thing that you didn't say that's super important for us to know about how to succeed on YouTube and use that as a tool for our podcast?
So I would think the number one thing that I would say is, if your video isn't doing well, you don't want to change the verbiage or the text very often, because what happens is often YouTube will pick that up in their algorithm and they'll kind of start looking for an audience. But if you're not doing well, the number one thing you want to do is go change a thumbnail, because you're not going to have YouTube have to look at it again and figure out what to do. But that can change your conversion rate big time. So if you can get more conversions, you're going to get more views. That's the number one thing it comes down to. Okay.
And I just heard, I'll share a tip that someone just gave to me yesterday.
Oh, cool.
I was talking to them, interviewing for their podcast, and they said that now what they're doing, and I'm going to do this shortly, is they have the guests take 60 seconds at the end to just riff a little bit. And then they use that as a YouTube short.
Oh, cool.
To promote the podcast. And they said so far they're getting some good traffic with it. It's a new thought.
Cool. Well, there's actually a tool I use that helps a little bit with that. It's called video.ai, video.ai. And you can take a link to any YouTube video, or you can just upload your own video and it'll define all the shorts, chapters, and stuff like that. And it'll score them on 0 to 100. So I know there's other tools out there that do that, but the thing that this one does is it does like the horizontal chapter size ones that are like 6 to 10 minutes too, because I like to use those for like segments from a show. And it's such a time saver. It's such a great tool.
Fantastic. Well, I'm glad I mentioned something so that now I can do it with getting some of these great tools. Well, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your knowledge. Is there anything else that I didn't ask you that you're feeling is on your heart and you want to share with the listeners?
I would say just the amount of time you need to be willing to do this. Because I think a lot of people think, like, hey, if you're not famous in 3 months, like it's not working out. If you're going to start a podcast or if you're doing a podcast, you need to be willing to be in this for 6 months to a year. And you're going to learn a lot in that period of time. And you got to give yourself time to be found and you got to give yourself time to find your own voice. You have to be in it for more than a couple months to see how this thing's going to go. For
sure. We can't quit quickly. So coming back to sort of, I talk about having a reset mindset, and what that is being able to dynamically reassess on an ongoing basis. And so I think that's a perfect element, right? Is whenever you start something new, is you're learning and you have to reassess early and often to see, okay, how do I need to tweak this? How can I be more efficient? How can my platform be better? So I think that's a perfect way to build in that they can have their reset mindset in that. So awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. Where can people find out more about you and connect with your podcast? We'll have all those links on there, but I just want to hear you direct people.
Well, so the number one thing you need to do now is get your message out and get the word out. And I want to help people do that, whether it's through a podcast or whether that's, getting yourself out there in the right places. So I put together a really great resource for your audience called Command Your Empire, because I want to help people command their empire. And you're going to learn everything you need to know about like basic online PR and podcasting so you can start getting your message out and winning. So if you head over to commandyourempire.com right now, you can get that free. And we'll just want to help your audience out.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And thank you all for being here. So I don't care whether you're a podcaster, you're a potential guest, you're a leader in your organization. There was something here for you today for sure. And who knows, you might be in your organization and this might have sparked you to have an idea because you're passionate about something maybe that you do on the side. Why not create a podcast and get your voice heard and get out there? So, or at least maybe be a guest and build your knowledge base and your following. So with that said, this is Take Back Time. My name is Penny Zanker, and we'll see you in the next episode. Hey, thank you for spending this time with me. It really means a lot. If you're feeling a little off, distracted, overwhelmed, stuck, or just out of sync, remember that's your signal to reset. And that's all it takes, just recognizing one reset moment at a time. So stay tuned for more tips, tools, tricks, stories, strategies, all here on Time to Reset. We'll see you in the next episode.